everyone. Welcome to the Sex, God, and Yoga online conference for women. My name is Jessica Durivage. I'm the founder of Where Is My Guru, and I am here with Karina Mirsky. I don't even know if I have words to describe how much I love and care about the women we are going to spend the next 75 to 90 minutes with. I just invite you all to really, really settle in. You are in for such a treat. I'm going to talk a little bit about Karina in just a moment. But hi, Karina, how are you?
Hi, Jess. I'm great. Thank you for those kind words.
Oh, I have tons of them. They're just like in my heart. They're everywhere. Just so grateful for you and the topic today. So let me just introduce Karina and the topic today and tell why I'm gushing over this goddess and that is with us right now. I've known Karina, it's been 10 years, and Karina is in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I am in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I have this story that I tell where I say I moved to Kalamazoo, Michigan for a man, and I left without the man, but I left with a yoga teacher for life and a friend for life and a sister for life, and it is this woman right here who changed so much of kind of just the paradigm of my landscape of how I view yoga. And we are here today, and she's going to change the paradigm of the landscape of how you view your life, your love life, your relationships, and your yoga as well. So that's before the interview, we were talking about how she is one of her most amazing gifts is to trigger you in a way that is compassionate and loving and gentle of, wait a minute, she's saying something that's not how I do it. I've never done it that way before. I don't know if I want to do it that way before, but this woman is embodying so much truth around why she's so passionate about sharing the information about how it can be done differently, that it actually makes you curious to explore it. So I want to set that tone for the session right now. Karina has dedicated her life to the teachings of consciousness. She has spent 20 years studying with master teachers, humbly practicing, then sharing what she has learned through her own unique Western feminine voice. Karina's mission is to empower people with the tools of self-awareness, compassion, and confidence needed to live an authentic and truly happy life. In 2007, Yoga Rupa Rod Stryker named her Devi Das, Servant of the Divine Mother. I was there with her at Kripalu when she was given that name. I remember exactly where we were in the hallway when she came and told me. Karina lives in service to love, which she believes can be experienced and expressed in many forms. Her personal story, depth of wisdom, lighthearted nature have touched thousands of lives. She's a yoga and meditation educator, self-development coach, lecturer, retreat leader, and sacred activist. And she's the founder of Sangha Yoga in Michigan. So you can connect with her. There's all different ways for you to connect with her right on this page. And today we are going to be talking about the freedom to love and be loved, expanding the new love paradigm. And we will be exploring the dissatisfactions women sometimes experience in monogamous relationships and while single, and how we might expand our ideas about and capacities to love and feel loved. And I know for a fact that those words, that she poured over those words and how they were expressed and shared. So thank you so much, Karina.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jess. I'm delighted to be here. It's a true honor.
So let's ground in, and we'll get started.
Okay.
So close your eyes, as we have done for all of these sessions together here, whether this is the first session you've come to, if this is the 21st session. Allow the breath to be fresh. Allow this next sip of breath to be fresh as you inhale. And exhale. And just feel the ground beneath your feet, your sitting bones. If you're lying down, feel your body relax. Shoulders, jaw. In your mind's eye, please see all of the sisters in this sacred circle, sitting here, coming together again, knee to knee, hand to hand, heart to heart. In your mind's eye, imagine you can look around the circle and make contact, eye contact, heart contact with each woman who's here today. Allowing yourself to fully be seen. And I would like to hold a space of gratitude for Karina, for her years of service and dedication and devotion to this work, for living her life in a trial by fire, continuously polishing her heart through her experience, through the wisdom of the teachings, through her own experience, through the wisdom of the teachings, through her own experience. Thank you, Karina, for being here.
Thank you, Jessica. And I just might add that as we're sitting here in circle, may our eyes be open to truth, and our ears be open to truth, and may our voices speak truth, and may our hearts really know truth. Thank you.
Thank you. So, before we jump into the session, one of the questions we're asking many of the women is sort of the title of this conference, Sex, God, Yoga, and why you feel excited about it and excited about this conversation, and what the leading up to us coming together to have this session together, how it's changed you even.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it's a very provocative title, right? And it's conversations, I think, that are stigmatized, in spiritual communities, in the yoga world. Like, how do we talk about our sexuality? How do we even talk about women's role in a very traditionally male-dominated practice, right? So I love the invitation that you and Katie have created to have that conversation. What is our role in this, and how do we seek God? How do women seek God? And how do we embrace our sexuality and our spirituality simultaneously, when then sometimes we've been taught that those two things might be in conflict with one another? So it's very exciting to be a part of this dialogue, and I'm super grateful that the two of you have initiated this together, and I'm just honored to be here. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. It's a wonderful opportunity for all of us to just get into the inquiry in a really meaningful way and know ourselves better and accept ourselves more.
I feel extremely lucky. These conversations are happening a couple months before we share all this information with the world, and I'm changed by everyone, which makes me even more excited to share, when they're shared. So, and this topic, the new love paradigm, what inspired you to share this topic with us today and this information?
A lot of it has come from the conversations that I've had with my clients, both male and female clients. So I have a coaching practice, which is kind of a blend of psychotherapy and traditional yoga psychology and practice. And these common themes just keep arising. Themes in coupled relationships, themes for singles, themes for people who are dating, and just the struggles that seem to emerge as themes. So that was definitely one of the main inspirations for it. And then also just, of course, my own personal exploration. I'm a 40-year-old single woman. I've never been married. And so what has that looked like for me, and what have I learned about that? And you had asked just a second ago about what's come up for me in the exploration around the conference, and it was so timely, Jess. When the invitation came to participate, I was in the middle of doing a really big processing and really big reevaluation of my own paradigms and my own views on relationships. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have a structure, a framework to kind of organize those thoughts into, and it's been extremely empowering to do that. So my intention for this is that we can open a dialogue which might empower us to really seek what deeply supports love in our lives, and also to help us to understand and accept and maybe even possibly celebrate that what it looks like for us might look different for someone else.
It's a lot to, I mean, already already I can feel myself I don't even know how to, I'm married, right? And I have a child, and what I've kind of discovered is I don't even know what I want it to look like for me, right? So can you talk about like the old love paradigm, the new love paradigm, and where, like, you're seeing yourself and your clients kind of fall, because I know that I'm not digging the love paradigm that's just sort of like that I just fell into because we needed to survive and take care of a child, right?
Sure,
so I'm not happy with it, So can you talk a little bit about why we need this new love paradigm?
Absolutely. So societal history and like religious concepts have created these traditional paradigms for relationship, which have kind of shaped our ideas about what love is. And sometimes those actually can create barriers to love. So one of the really common ones that comes up, one of these themes that I hear a lot and that I've been kind of subject to myself, is this, I call it the soulmate trap. This idea that there is one person out there who can somehow complete us. So there's this subtle belief that we are not whole and complete, and that we need to look for someone to complete us, and that this person that we find is going to be our everything and is our one and only, and that the person who is going to be able to meet all of our needs. And so in researching a little bit, what I've learned is that 2/3 of divorces are actually initiated by women. So it just kind of raises this question, what are our expectations? Like, what have we been conditioned to believe would be true in a relationship that is then putting so much weight, so much pressure on this one other to meet all of our needs? Our unconscious processes that are influenced by our internal processes are influenced by these unconscious beliefs that I'm talking about, these things that we've kind of been repetitively exposed to over and over. And then what happens is we start to internalize these paradigms, and we desperately seek to fit into them, whether they're actually true for us or not. And we've never really been invited to question or challenge whether or not those social norms really, and those paradigms, if we fit into them. And even if we do fit into them, we don't know how to allow them to not fit for somebody else, right? So for singles especially, this is what comes up. And I've experienced this so many times where it seems like people are just really uncomfortable with single women. They don't know how to be in relationship to us. It's like, oh, you just haven't found the right guy yet. Or, oh, don't worry, he's out there. Or you never know, you never know. And then we start to internalize that. And we start asking ourselves questions like, well, God, is there something wrong with me? Am I broken? Am I effed up in some way that none of my relationships have terminated in a marriage? And we start to really disconnect from what is true. We don't even know. So the first time that this concept came to me was back in my 20s. I used to collect tarot cards, with all the different art on them and, just different divination tools. And one of them that I came across was the Osho Zen Tarot. So it was a deck that was compiled for the teachings of Zen Master Osho. It has beautiful art. And this card that always really stuck out to me was a card called the Aloneness card. And the commentary question was the difference between loneliness and aloneness, where loneliness is the absence of another. And aloneness is the full and total presence of oneself. And so this is where I think this conversation can become very yogic in its nature, is when we start asking, okay, so who is the self? And so yoga teaches us that this true self, who we really are, is this pure consciousness that is completely connected to source, that is totally clear. It is clarity itself. It is connection itself. It is love itself. And when we rest our awareness in that self and we come to know ourselves as that self, then we show up calm, clear, confident, compassionate, centered, grounded, purposeful. And that is really what I'm starting to think we need to shift our idea of the primary relationship to. It's like if we shift our primary relationship to being that relationship with self, and we start asking ourselves, like, what do I need to stay anchored in that? Like, what kind of external conditions, what kind of relationships support me staying anchored in that wholeness, in that completion? And then how can I organize my external life to really support that? And some people do that best coupled. You know, they really find that reflection of self in another person. But some people do that best singled when they're not constantly being triggered by another person, you know, knocked off of that center or pulled out of that center. And I've even coached and counseled some people who are finding that they do that best in multiple loving partnerships. So, I mean, there's even models for like conscious co-parenting that don't have to look like the traditional paradigm of the nuclear family. So to me, as long as love is the driving force, you know, anything is possible. Mm-hmm. I know that was a lot. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, you know, you're talking about a lot about the paradigms and the conditioning, you know, and that, you know, and you're asking us to you know, there's, I mean, I'm not being triggered, but there's so much that's true for me, right? There's so much about what you're saying that's really true around the relationship with the self and just dropping back in, you know, just reflecting that again, because I think it was just a really wonderful point and just like so powerful, like dropping into the shift of making your primary relationship. I just want to say that again. It was so profound. The primary relationship is with yourself instead of with the partner or the you know, the desirable partner, you know, the whatever, and then organizing all of that around. I mean, you really coalesced a lot of the work I've been doing personally, and I'm sure many women here, you know, watching this, like, you know, coming to this conference are doing, but you said it so clearly that it almost just like put the puzzle pieces together, like right in my heart, just the way you said it so clearly. But we're bumping up against all this conditioning, right? And what does love mean? Like we're bumping up against all these definitions of love and what relationships should look like. So how are we like redefining love in this paradigm?
Yeah. So, you know, Brene Brown, mm-hmm. I just watched an interview with her quite recently, actually, where she was asked the same question, like, okay, so how do you define love? And she said that love is not something that we give or we get. It's something that grows between two people when they allow themselves to be fully seen by each other. So I sat with that, and I would actually take that just one little step further, and I would say that love is more than just being seen. It's genuinely accepting and having compassion for what's being witnessed. So I have this little, what I call my formula for love, which starts with curiosity. It's like, and this applies to love towards the self as well as love towards other humans. It's like really genuinely being curious, like not judging, not interpreting, But really, what is there for you? What's there? Like, what is that? What's arising? What is that feeling? What is that trigger? What is that belief? What is that problem? Like, what's there? Like, so the first step is to really get curious, put the assumptions aside and just get curious. And through that inquiry process arises the possibility of true understanding of what's really going on. And once we understand what's there, no matter how difficult it is to look at, whether we like it or not, we understand that that's what's there, and then we just accept it. We just accept that that is what is here in this moment, like it or not, that's what's here. And then we turn towards it compassionately. We turn towards it with compassion. And to me, that process is love in action. Like, that is what love is. It's this willingness to be curious and then really accept what is there and have compassion for it. Just hold it in compassion. So for me, the process of allowing myself to be loved, allowing ourselves to be loved, is like revealing ourselves to someone who can hold us in compassion. And then loving someone else means being willing to engage in this process with them, or in some cases for them, with compassion. So wanting to know what's there, accepting what's being revealed, and having compassion for it. To me, that is love.
Would you remind us a little bit, because I'm just like, yes, that's like what I want to do all the time. So will you remind me of what I usually do?
What do we usually do? We usually hear something or we feel something and we react to it with defense, with our protective mechanisms start to jump in. We start to say, that's not okay what you're doing. We start to have all kinds of assumptions about it. We take it personally, the 4 agreements, don't take anything personally. That is what we usually do. We usually feel like if someone's doing something that's hurtful to us, that they're actually doing it to us and that it is about us. And so we defend that because we're trying to, self-preservation is just so built into our limbic system, into our reptilian brain, to, self-preservation, to defend ourselves. And so when we feel like we're being wronged in some way or misunderstood in some way, we just ultimately automatically default to defense. We don't default to curiosity. Does that make sense? So it is a practice. It's like, wait a minute, you're doing something that's not working for me or that's hurting me. And you must be doing it because you know better. So you must be doing it purposefully to hurt me, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. When oftentimes that is just not the case. In fact, most of the time it's not the case. We're also egocentric. We're not really even thinking about how our actions are really impacting others most of the time anyway. Yeah. We're just all in our own little self-preservation modes. So I think that's what happens a lot of times.
Yeah. So kind of taking it back to what you were talking about earlier about this, like the soulmate trap and really, like the needs in relationship and how, we want all of our needs to get met by this one person. Can you talk a little bit more about what that kind of looks like in this new way of thinking?
Sure. So in the accompanying practice that I'm offering for this talk, it's called the Contemplation of Needs practice. And so in that, I list kind of some of our common needs that show up in relationship, but just show up in our lives in general. So I'm looking at that PDF file now. So I have like what needs arise in our daily lives, our household activities, our financial well-being, our needs for emotional processing and problem solving, our personal interests and hobbies and social lives, our spirituality, our sense of purpose. We have needs around our personal growth and around physical intimacy. And so, interestingly enough, Ariel Ford cites some research that says that there are 6 to 8 irreconcilable differences that every couple has. So there's just places where they're just not going to fully be able to understand each other or really meet each other's needs. And the most successful long-term relationships, partnerships, marriages that I have witnessed are the ones who really get this. Like they know that they're not going to be able to get all of their needs met by this one person. So it all really comes back to our self-inquiry and being really honest about what we actually can sign up for so that we can really be clear with others. And I'm going to define honesty as exactly that, accepting what we can actually sign up for, not what we think we should be able to do, which is a real trap. Like we see something we see a need that our partner might have, and we want to meet it, but we might not fully have the capacity to do that. One of the greatest tools that I've ever come across for kind of understanding some of these core differences between people and helping us to understand ourselves is the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the personality model, the Myers-Briggs. And in this model, they have kind of 4 continuums of preferences in the way that we relate to ourselves and to the world around us. And when we feel anxious, when we feel most secure, like how we restore our energy, how we process information. So I'd love to just share a little example from the Myers-Briggs. So the very first one of the scales is the introvert-extrovert scale. And so introverted people, not in the kind of definition that we use, commonly. In this model, introvert means that people who restore their energy by being alone. And extroverts restore their energy by being with others, like by being social. And so if there's a couple who has one partner who is an introvert and one partner who is an extrovert, that partner who's introverted is going to really need to stay home a lot. It's probably not going to have the capacities to go out and be social and go to a lot of events because it will absolutely exhaust and deplete them. Whereas the extroverted partner, would to stay home all the time would exhaust and deplete them. So they really need to be able to go out and be social. So one of the ways that we can kind of get our needs met is by making really clear contracts with our partners through our own self-understanding and through understanding the other person. We can say, okay, how much do I want to participate or can I participate in what this other person's needs are? And how much do I need to honor my own needs in this way? And then kind of negotiate what that's going to look like. Because conflict arises when the partner who wants to go out gets mad at the partner who wants to stay home, or the partner who wants to stay home gets mad at the partner who wants to go out. Like we somehow should be able to do what the other partner wants or needs, and it's just not always possible. And so, I really believe that all relationships are contracts, whether they're spoken or unspoken, whether they're clearly defined or they're not. They are contracts, and when we know ourselves, when we're truly honest with ourselves, we can communicate our authentic needs and our boundaries and with each other. And it's so important to consciously agree to what you're signing up for, It's really, really important. And it's easy for us to commit to something when it's true for us, right? Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, a really helpful contemplation. Is just like, what do I really need, and who is my partner in relationship to this need, and can I give them permission to be who they need to be and give myself permission to be who I need to be, and can we communicate about that and make contracts that allow us to be together in the ways that work for us and not have to be together in the ways that just don't work for us. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay. Okay. So we identify needs. Is this contemplation something that you advise that we do it on our own, but then can we have our partner do it as well on their own and come together and discuss?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I think the Myers-Briggs is a really great conversation starter around that kind of stuff. It's a really simple, easy way to kind of get into that inquiry about, well, what are my preferences on these different continuums? And who is my partner? I want to give you just one more example. I had a friend in my 20s who is an extreme perceiving type in the Myers-Briggs, which just means that she gets really anxious if she's kind of like locked into a plan. She needs lots of possibilities. She needs things to be really fluid and open. Otherwise, she feels like, constricted. And I'm an extreme J, which is the opposite side of that. And I need things to be planned and scheduled, and it needs to be in my book. And if it's in my book, it's going to be done. But if it's not in my book, I'm going to be kind of overwhelmed if you ask me to do it, kind of thing. And it's good to have these self-awarenesses, because then we can kind of recognize, oh, okay, this is this nature showing up for me. Maybe I need to make a little bit of space around it, right? But I just remember being young and just always being so triggered by her canceling plans all the time, like making plans and canceling plans. And what the Myers-Briggs really taught me, and it taught me that in this relationship, was that nobody has to be wrong because we have different ways of being in the world. Nobody has to be wrong. Like one paradigm is not better than another. There's no one right way. There's not even one ideal. It's just differences. And if we can get to know ourselves and we can talk about those differences, we can just create these really clear contracts and get our needs met in ways that we can get them met, and not expect to get them met in ways that we can't get them met.
And what a relief that is.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, I'm not supposed to fit in to anything, what a relief. What a relief,
Yeah. And that nobody has to be wrong.
Yeah.
Because they're different. I think that was huge for me. That, no one is wrong if we have different needs. We're not wrong if we have different capacities or different preferences or personality styles. They're just different. And understanding those differences is the key to kind of unlocking where we can get our needs met and where we can't.
Yeah. So, okay, so we identify with our partner that we've got, lots of needs that we're meeting with each other, and it's great. But then there's some, like this work is bringing up that there's some needs that we're not able to meet. So what I could maybe perceive if I had this conversation with my husband, that those places are all the places that we're just constantly going like this, and they may be non-negotiable, right? They may be things that are non-negotiable for the both of us, and so we don't want to go like this anymore. So what do we do?
Yeah, we accept that this is one of those, that research that I cited, that this is one of maybe those irreconcilable differences. And again, we acknowledge that neither one of us has to be wrong, but we just kind of talk about, okay, well, then what is the solution around this? If this is not a place that we can meet each other, then what? Then we can maybe go outside of the relationship to try to get those needs met. Like, I'm pretty introverted, and one of my longest term monogamous partners is pretty extroverted. And so, I had a need to be in a lot, and I would get exhausted just thinking about his lifestyle, just thinking about like all the events he was going to all the time and all this. I would get tired just thinking about it. And, we just recognize that he just needs to go out. He has friends, he has events, he needs to go out, and I just need to stay home. And it's fine. It's like we just recognize that we can do those things separately. And one of the themes that has shown up a lot with my clients and with just yoga practitioners that I've talked to over the years is, women especially, they'll embark on this spiritual journey, and they'll start to do all this self-inquiry, and they'll start changing, and they'll start questioning things, and they really have this need to process that stuff, and to kind of sort through things emotionally or spiritually, and then they get really upset with their partners because they're not on that path, or they don't have that new insight. And they want to be able to have that conversation with that person. And I'm going to go so far as to say they're attached to being able to have that kind of conversation with that person. Mm-hmm. But really, the reality is we have lots of yoga sisters that we can have yoga conversations with. And if we're willing to go outside of the relationship to get that need met and not put that pressure on our partner to be the one to have those kinds of conversations, then, maybe that's a relationship contract that could be negotiated, that could be successful. Just maybe. I don't know, but maybe.
Well, what I would even go as far to say is unconsciously, I think a lot of women are doing that already, right? Like we're already getting our needs met on the outside, but we're still doing this with the partner and identifying, like, what you were asking us to do in this session, inviting us to have this inquiry with ourselves is, this doesn't have to be, because we don't have to make it wrong that it's not happening over here, and really know where it is happening for you in your life and receive it.
And practicing love, if you go back to my little formula, it's like, okay, we're in disagreement, we're in conflict. All right, so that's because I'm really attached to and really committed to my way of being or seeing this. And I'm really committed to being in my way of seeing this. So the process of love is going, well, let me just see what's there for you. Can I just get curious about that? Oh, it's that. Okay, I can hold that in compassion for you and accept that this is something that's different. And then, then we have the ability to it doesn't have to be this anymore. Then it can start to be like this.
Okay, so what happens when, I think that's a great example, because a great example is like women getting a lot of needs met by other women and identifying that we're getting our needs met through being able to communicate with other women. Whether if you're a mom, like I know, communicating with other moms about just really knowing I'm not going to get my, very easy to identify those types of things. But when we get in relationship where there's intimacy needs not being met, sexual needs not being met. So where does that, does this fall into this new paradigm too? Or, are we including all of that?
Absolutely. We can't not include it, right? So if the need that's not being met is sex, then I'm going to say typically, in my experience, if there's a lack of sex in a relationship, in a committed relationship, it's really a symptom of something else. There's some other core issue that's kind of shutting down the intimacy between two people, either shutting it down for one person or shutting it down for both partners. So, the really important question to ask, if that's what's happening, is, are both parties willing to get into the inquiry about what that core issue is? Are they really willing to talk about it? Are they willing to maybe seek counsel about how to work through that core issue and work towards creating resolution? And that's a big one. When I was in my graduate program, I interviewed kind of 4 of the leading psychotherapists in our area, and I asked them all the same question. I said, what does it take to make a marriage work? And they all said, willingness. So both parties have to be willing to work on creating that resolution for that intimacy to be reinvited into the relationship. Now, whether that happens or it doesn't happen, another question that kind of fits into this paradigm is, how important is the sexual relationship in the overall context of the relationship contract between those two people? Is the lack of sexual intimacy creating a barrier to love, to that ability to really love each other? And, if it is, then it might be time to reevaluate that relationship contract. Mm-hmm. And, even the couples there's been couples that I've seen when they choose to separate or divorce, I've seen this done with loving kindness, with acceptance, and with respect for each other. And there's actually a term for that now called conscious uncoupling, mm-hmm. right? And so, it's my personal belief that when the commitment is love, that anything is possible. Relationship contracts need to have boundaries. They need to have limits. But love itself doesn't have any limits.
So are you saying that, when we're kind of just keeping it on sex,
sure.
Are you saying that I guess my question is if the couple's willing to come together and just work on the core issue, but maybe they still discover that sex is one of those irreconcilable differences, what then?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's going to be different for everyone. Again, it comes back to, how important is that in the context of the overall relationship, right? Is it creating a barrier to love? And if it is, then those couples tend to separate. And I think that can still be done in a really loving way. But I have also, in my practice, seen examples of some really highly functional, healthy, open relationships, especially in situations where the sexual limitation is something that's physical. Like if there's I have a client that's in a wheelchair, right? Or I have, there's a woman who has adenomyosis, which makes sex very painful, And so these are two examples of there's been some relationships where like, okay, well, you can have that need met outside of the relationship. And that gets to be really tricky, and that's definitely not something for everyone. So I'm not saying that's the answer, but I'm saying it's a possibility. And when people are committed to love, the possibilities are limitless. They really are. And then no matter what we decide will be the new contract, we can always reevaluate that contract later if it's not working. I mean, sometimes I suggest to couples, why don't you try this that you're talking about right now? Try it for 3 to 6 months and then reevaluate whether or not this new way of trying to do this is working, right?
Yeah.
So, again, the possibilities when love is at the forefront, when really the desire to understand and really, we want to uplift and empower and see the person that we love in their highest and be in service to that, right? To me, that is really loving. And so, yeah, I've seen it happen. I have, but more times than not, if it's really that big of an issue and it can't be resolved, or in some cases, like one partner is just not willing to work on it, just not willing to go to therapy, just not willing to talk about it or accept, their part of it. Those couples do tend to inevitably separate, which is like okay,
yeah.
Again, part of our cultural conditioning, we have all this stigma around separation and divorce, that it somehow means that that's a failed relationship, another failed relationship. And it's like, who came up with that? Why does that have to be what that means? Why can't it be two people came together who love one another, created a contract, over a period of time, that contract needed to change, they changed the contract, and now they're, moving on to whatever the next lessons of love and, partnership might be. I really want us to challenge this idea that it's like, it always has to be a failure or something negative, even if we just decide that coupling in this way isn't going to work. The partner that I mentioned earlier, this long-term deep love of my life, still is the greatest love of my life. We reached that point where we were together monogamously, kind of working towards this idea of maybe creating a marriage, and then realized that was not the contract that was going to work for us. So we reorganized the contract, and we still are really powerful forces for love in each other's lives, but we are no longer trying to work towards a marital contract. So anything's possible when love is at the forefront.
Yeah. There's definitely some more questions I want to ask you, but I want to I had a really powerful conversation with a girlfriend of mine, and it was like one of the very first times, like, she's going through something in her relationship, and and I just found myself saying to her, like, you need to do what's best for you in your relationship.
That's right.
And it was like, again, like this relief that came over the both of us of just being like, oh yeah, like, we don't need to do what's best for what people think or what my mom thinks or what this person thinks. Like, if something that was quote unquote like not traditional or alternative or whatever it is, even those words we can get hung up on, because then we think we're doing something that's different, instead of just what's right for us, but just say, and to everybody that's here in this circle with us right now, and just reminding ourselves, like, we need to do what's best for us in our primary relationship, right? Is what you're empowering. Yeah. Inviting us to remember, and then do what's best for us in our relationships, not what the outside forces are never going to like, no. There's always going to be something more we need to do, or we're not right, or we're never really going to fit in, especially if you're watching this conference. Like, we're definitely not going to fit into like a traditional, mode. So
I got a phone call today. I have for a doctor's appointment, and they wanted to do this preliminary like check-in sort of registration piece. And they started asking me all these statistical questions about my race and what my marital status was. And I said, why does that matter? My marital status is absolutely no one's business whatsoever. And I don't understand why there are these boxes: married, single, divorced. To me, there are multitudes of different paradigms within those boxes. you know? And I have deep, loving commitments in my life that are love, that are profound, that are, not a marriage. So I don't fit into those boxes. But everywhere, even on our doctor's forms, we're asked to try to fit into those boxes of relationship. And, it's just really, it's just time for us to question and challenge that and expand our ideas about what love and what relationship and what commitments can actually look like and what these contracts can actually be, and, not be single, desperate to be coupled, or married and desperate to get our needs met because our soulmate can't do it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, as I wanted to keep reflecting on again and again, if you're talking about like the wisdom of self-knowledge, right? The wisdom of really knowing what you need first, right? And at the beginning, we talked about having this inquiry for yourself. So as you talked a lot about your clients, and then you've touched a little bit on the relationships that you've had. So where are you personally in this journey? Like, do you feel like you're ready to share like a testimony for how this work and, exploring this new paradigm has shifted your life?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking, Jess. I used to, and I'm going to use the word victim. I used to be victimized by that internalization of the traditional paradigms and the societal pressures that were put on me to fit into the framework, to be able to check one of those boxes, and I really had that thought for years, like something must be wrong with me if that's not what's happening, if none of my relationships are leading to a marriage, or if I'm not even sure that that's what I want, then there must be something broken in me, and I suffered with that for a long, long time. And I also noticed, and I thought, if I experience moments of loneliness, then it must mean that I really do want to be coupled in that way. So one of the most liberating and empowering moments of my life is when I started to question those beliefs. Some of the loneliest people that I know are coupled, and I saw that and I went, well, what is loneliness? And I kind of came back to that Osho card, and this, cycled around. And what I really realized is that we can feel, we're there's this belief that we are existentially alone in the universe. In yoga, we call it avidya, that we're existentially alone. We are disconnected. So to me, loneliness is believing that lie. And it's a disconnection from that self. It's a disconnection from source. It's a disconnection from the energy of love itself. So the more time that I spent resting my awareness through meditation in that calm, clear, centered, spacious, compassionate self, I started to question also, okay, well, now that I know what that feels like, what keeps me anchored there? And I realized that in all these years and all these relationships, I realized that forming a traditional marriage was actually my choice all along, but I used to choose it unconsciously. And now that I understand that what I need to be most anchored in that self is actually a lot of solitude. So now I can choose that consciously without judgment, without shame, which is huge. It was like, I think fireworks went off that day when I really got that, And like I said before, not just because I'm not coupled, it doesn't mean that I don't have, copious amounts of love in my life. I mean, I have long-term, deeply loving, committed friendships, people who show up for me with perspective and with compassion and just hold that container of love for me and reflect me and name me and make me feel so seen, like Brene Brown said, so seen and so cared for. I mean, that I'm just, I'm so overflowing with love, really. And I heard you mention earlier that, that's the something that you want to try to live every day. And it's like, I really do. I mean, I try to really be curious and accepting and compassionate with all my relations, with everyone that I encounter. So that's why I say I feel like I'm living a life of love, because that's my commitment. And when I do now choose to engage in like a physically intimate relationship, I have the ability to be really honest so that I can make really clear contracts with that person. And so the expectations are really clear, So today, I'm happiest I've ever been in my life. I've created those external conditions that really support that primary relationship with self, that allow me to stand in my commitments to myself and to other people, and to feel really whole and complete in that relationship with self. So I truly feel free to love and be loved.
And you can't put that in a box.
Can't check that in a box.
You can't check that in a box.
This woman asked me what my marital status was. I wanted to say, free.
Should like write that. I feel free to love and be loved. That should be like the new thing you write on all our forms.
Right. Like, what do you call that? We don't have a name for it. We don't have a paradigm for it.
Yeah.
But that's my experience. It's my experience right now.
Do you find that? Is this the guiding force in your work with your clients too? Is working with them to get to this place individually and then in their relationships, or if they're not in a relationship?
Oh, sure. Really, for me, the work is it's self-knowledge, it's self-acceptance, it's the process of love. Like, what's really there, what's really true. Let's just get on board with accepting that that's what it is. Let's have compassion for it. And I have watched that transform lives. I have watched people become so empowered, and in the context of relationship, empowered to leave a really a painful, dysfunctional relationship, or the power to step towards one when there was so much fear, or the power to stand in their singleness without shame and really just accept that this is their choice and that it's okay to choose it, but also it happens in all sorts of ways, people with creative blocks, like they're through their creativity, or people approaching new career ventures. This process applies to empowering us in all ways, because when we're really seeking what our hearts are longing for, when we're really seeking what really is true for us, and we really just accept it, man, then we can live in it, we can just live in it, and we're just free to live in whatever that looks like. So yes, it is absolutely the core of my work, although it doesn't always focus on love or relationships, but I think that's it,
Yeah.
Like Pandit Rajmani Tiganayat, one of my teachers, I sat with him once a few years ago, and he said to me, Karina, just be happy. When you're happy, everyone is happy. And I took that on as a practice. And I started to really get into the inquiry of what is happy? What does happy feel like? What does happy look like? How does happy show up in my external life? Mm-hmm. And I really have to thank that very short interaction with him for all of this, because that's really where it came from. It's this deep drive to just be okay all the time.
Well, with that, beautiful seed that he planted inside of your heart, what is the seed that you wish to plant in the hearts of everyone listening to this, and as we work to absorb this information? And I don't know about everybody else here, but I feel completely seen by you, just in your bravery to encourage, to see yourself. Mm. So thank you for that.
Yeah. The seed would be, just know that you are worthy. You are worthy. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be free. You deserve to be supported in what creates that for you. You are worthy. That's the seed. Mm.
Oh, I love you, Karina.
I love you too, Sue.
Before we can you talk a little bit more just about the practice that you're leaving us with? I know you mentioned it in the middle, but just again now and what this practice looks like and how to do it.
Yeah, so it's just a PDF file, so something you can they print them out?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
They'll all be
downloaded.
and downloaded.
Yeah, so you can just print this out. It's just I can even show you. It's just a little single page document. It's a little practice where we start by, contemplating some of those needs that I had mentioned. And then there's a secondary level of inquiry for people who are currently coupled and people who are currently single. And then taking what we learned from that and kind of rating our needs from like a fleeting want to an essential need, and then questioning what our beliefs are about who's supposed to be filling those needs, who's supposed to be meeting those needs. And then it concludes with this question, does the possibility exist that some of them could be met in some other way? And then there's just a few other little questions about that. So it's really just an inquiry, there's no right or wrong answers, and it could potentially evolve over time as you were to return to this practice over and over again. It might be something really cool to do with a partner if you're coupled, but this was part of the process that I think really helped me to understand that there's lots of different ways for me to get my needs met, even as a single woman. I hire people to do things a lot if I don't want to do it. But that works, like I don't have a guy to clean the gutters of my house. It's okay. I just hire someone to do that. It wasn't expensive, like $25.
Well, thank you so much. And if I can just, I'm so overjoyed. I don't even think happy isn't even the right word, but I'm so overjoyed for you because the work that you are authentically expressing that you're doing with yourself is the work that you effortlessly have always given to others.
Thank you for that, Jessica.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just really hope that this time that we spent, with the people who are listening, that it serves them, that, that they feel a little more open or spacious around, how they can feel more loved and more seen in their lives. So it's really my commitment to empower and uplift others. And, I'm easy to get in touch with if you need me. I'm pretty accessible.
Thank you, Karina.
Yeah. Thank you, sweetheart.
Namaste.
Take care. Namaste.